Victoria Ashford had everything money could buy: a penthouse overlooking the city, a luxury car collection, and the attention of every powerful person in her circle. But when she fell in love with a man 26 years younger, her obsession transformed into something darker. And by the time she realized what he really wanted, it was already too late to stop him, because Marcus Reid didn't just want her money. He wanted her dead. If you're fascinated by how wealth and desire can become deadly weapons, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't believe how this sugar mommy's search for love became her final mistake. But let's go back to where it all began. 6 months before Victoria's body was found in her penthouse bathroom, she was a different woman, or at least she told herself she was. At 52 years old, Victoria had built an empire from nothing. Her father had left her a small real estate company 30 years ago, and through ruthless negotiations and perfect timing, she had transformed it into one of the most profitable development firms on the West Coast. She owned office buildings, shopping centers, and luxury residential complexes. Her net worth exceeded $340 million, and her name appeared regularly in Forbes and Bloomberg. But success had come at a price. 2 failed marriages, countless affairs that never lasted beyond a few months, and a reputation in the business world as someone who was cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. Men wanted her money. Women envied her power. And Victoria? She was profoundly, achingly alone. The penthouse where she spent most evenings was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city skyline, marble floors imported from Italy, and artwork that cost more than most people's entire homes. But at night, when the city lights blurred into a constellation of loneliness, Victoria would stand at those windows with a glass of expensive wine and wonder if this was all there was. She had everything except the one thing she couldn't buy: genuine human connection. Her assistant, Patricia, had suggested the dating app. "You're an attractive woman, Victoria. You have so much to offer. Why not try online dating?" Victoria had laughed at the suggestion initially. Online dating seemed desperate, something for people who couldn't find partners through normal social circles. But after a particularly lonely weekend where she attended a gala alone and watched couples dancing together, she downloaded the app at midnight and created a profile. She posted a recent photo. She looked good for her age, she knew that. Her blonde hair was expertly maintained, her skin tight from expensive treatments, her body toned from twice-weekly Pilates sessions. In her profile, she was honest about her wealth. Why hide it? Men would find out eventually anyway. The messages started immediately. Dozens of them. Men in their 30s and 40s, mostly looking for financial stability or access to her connections. Victoria deleted most without responding. They were transparent, crude, obvious in their desperation. She was about to give up on the entire experiment when she saw Marcus Reid's profile. His photo showed a man with dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that seemed to look directly into the camera, directly into her soul. He was 26 years old, a fitness trainer and aspiring actor, living in a modest apartment downtown. His profile was sparse, which somehow made it more intriguing. He didn't immediately ask about her wealth or her connections. His message was simple: "Hi, I know this is random, but I noticed you from across the coffee shop on 5th Street last week. I've been looking for your profile ever since. I think we might have something in common." Victoria knew it was a line. It had to be, but something about the way he wrote it, confident without being arrogant, personal without being presumptuous, made her respond. They messaged for 3 days before he asked her to meet for coffee. She almost declined. She was 52 years old, for God's sake. What was she doing arranging coffee dates with a 26-year-old? But the memory of the empty penthouse, the lonely nights, the sense that life was passing her by, pushed her to say yes. The coffee shop on 5th Street was deliberately casual, Marcus's choice. Victoria appreciated that. She arrived 10 minutes early, nervous in a way she hadn't been in decades. When he walked in, she understood immediately why he had chosen such a public place. He wanted her to see him without the filter of a dating profile. He wanted to prove he was real. He was even more attractive in person than in his photo. Tall, with the kind of lean, muscular build that came from genuine fitness, rather than excessive gym time. He was wearing simple clothes, jeans, and a fitted black shirt, but he wore them with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how to present himself. "Victoria," he said, smiling as he approached her table, "you're even more beautiful than your photos." It was a compliment, but delivered with such sincerity that it didn't feel like flattery. He sat down across from her, and for the first time in years, Victoria felt something flutter in her chest. It felt like hope. It felt like possibility. It felt dangerous. Their first conversation lasted 4 hours. Marcus was intelligent. He read extensively, had opinions about literature and film, asked her thoughtful questions about her business. But he also knew when to listen. When Victoria talked about the pressure of running her company, the loneliness of decision-making, the way men in business circles underestimated her until she proved them wrong, Marcus listened with complete attention. He didn't interrupt. He didn't check his phone. He was present in a way that felt almost foreign to Victoria. When the coffee shop began closing, neither of them wanted to leave. "Can I see you again?" Marcus asked as they stood outside on the sidewalk. "I know the age difference might be strange for you, but I feel like we have a real connection." Victoria should have said no. She should have recognized the warning signs, the perfect compliments, the intense focus, the way he seemed to anticipate her emotions. But instead, she said yes. She said yes, because for the first time in a long time, someone was making her feel alive. They began seeing each other regularly. Dinner at exclusive restaurants, weekend trips to nearby coastal towns, nights at her penthouse where Marcus would cook for her, simple, delicious meals that showed he had learned her preferences, her tastes, the little things that made her feel cared for. Victoria's friends warned her. Her business partner expressed concern. Patricia, her assistant, gently suggested that the relationship seemed to be moving very quickly. But Victoria dismissed all warnings. She was in love, or at least she was in love with the idea of being in love, with the illusion that Marcus had created around her. 3 months into their relationship, Marcus moved into the penthouse. It was Victoria's idea, but he had set it up perfectly. He had mentioned, almost in passing, that his apartment building was being sold and he would need to find a new place. He couldn't afford anything decent in the city. His acting career wasn't taking off as quickly as he'd hoped. He was thinking about moving back to his parents' house upstate. Victoria had felt a surge of possessiveness. She couldn't bear the thought of him leaving, even to move back with his family. "Move in here," she had said. "It's ridiculous for you to pay rent when this penthouse has more space than we could ever use." Marcus had pretended to hesitate, to worry about what people would think, to be concerned about taking advantage of her generosity. But after a suitable amount of resistance, he had agreed. Within a week, his belongings were in the penthouse's guest bedroom, though he rarely slept there. Most nights, he was in Victoria's bed, his arms around her, whispering promises about their future together. But as the months passed, subtle changes began to occur. Marcus started making comments about Victoria's appearance. Not cruel ones, but observations that planted seeds of doubt. "That color doesn't really suit you," he would say about a dress she'd worn for years. "Your hair would look better longer. Men prefer longer hair." When she mentioned her age, he would quickly reassure her. "You don't look 52, but you could look even younger if you got that procedure everyone's talking about. I could help you research the best surgeons." Victoria found herself changing. She dyed her hair darker, following his suggestions. She scheduled cosmetic procedures she had never considered before. She dressed differently, spoke differently, shaped herself around his preferences like clay in his hands. He also began making comments about her money. Nothing direct at first, just observations. "It's funny that you work so hard but don't really enjoy the money," he would say. "You could retire tomorrow and live like a queen. Why do you stress yourself out with the business?" Or, "Most people would give anything to have the kind of wealth you do. You should really appreciate it more. Do something with it." Victoria started giving him money. First small amounts, a few thousand here and there for investments he was considering or opportunities that required capital. Then larger amounts. She bought him a car. She paid for acting classes and headshots and audition fees. She rationalized it all as supporting his dreams, investing in their future together. But Marcus's behavior was becoming increasingly controlling. He didn't like her working late. He questioned her about meetings with male colleagues. He wanted to know where she was going, who she was seeing, what she was doing every moment of the day. When she tried to maintain her independence, to assert her authority in her own life, he would withdraw. He would become cold and distant, would sleep in the guest bedroom, would refuse to touch her or speak to her for days. Victoria found herself desperate to regain his affection. She would apologize for things that weren't her fault. She would cancel important meetings to spend time with him. She would agree to whatever he wanted just to see him smile at her again. Her business partner, James, finally confronted her directly. "Victoria, something's wrong. You're not focused anymore. You've been making bad decisions, approving projects that don't make financial sense, and spending money recklessly. This isn't like you. It's him, isn't it? That boy is destroying you." Victoria had responded with anger. "Don't call him a boy. He's a man, and he loves me. You're just jealous because I'm happy for the first time in my life." James had shaken his head sadly. "I'm worried you're going to get hurt. I've seen this pattern before. Young, beautiful men who attach themselves to wealthy older women. It never ends well." Victoria fired him from the company 2 weeks later. Not directly. She engineered a forced buyout that left him with enough money to retire comfortably, but made it clear that his partnership with her was over. Marcus had been pleased. "He was a bad influence," he had said, kissing her forehead. "He didn't understand us. Now it's just you and me, and we don't need anyone else." By month 6, Victoria's world had shrunk to the size of the penthouse. She had pushed away her friends, her business associates, her family. Her assistant Patricia had resigned, no longer able to watch what was happening. Victoria had tried to hire a replacement, but Marcus didn't like anyone in the penthouse. He said they were stealing, or being disrespectful, or making him uncomfortable. So Victoria stopped hiring anyone. She answered her own emails, scheduled her own meetings, and found herself increasingly isolated from the outside world. And then Marcus had suggested marriage. They had been lying in bed, Victoria already half asleep, when he had whispered, "We should get married, don't you think? Make this official. Spend the rest of our lives together." Victoria's heart had soared. Despite all the warning signs she had ignored, despite the changes in his behavior and hers, she had wanted this, wanted to be bound to him, wanted to believe that this love was real and permanent. "Yes," she had whispered. "Yes, I want to marry you." But marriage to Marcus Reid would be the last decision Victoria Ashford would ever make. Because love, she would soon discover, was simply a weapon he had been sharpening all along. The penthouse that had once felt like an empire now felt like a prison. And the man who promised to love her forever was counting the days until he could inherit everything she owned, including her life. The engagement ring was a 5-carat diamond set in platinum, a piece that had belonged to Victoria's mother. Marcus had admired it once, months ago, and Victoria had immediately removed it from the safe and placed it on his finger. "It's yours," she had said. "Everything I have is yours." Now, 3 weeks before the wedding, Marcus stood in front of the mirror wearing that ring, smiling at his reflection like a predator who had finally cornered its prey. Victoria was in the master bathroom, preparing for the engagement party they were hosting that evening. She had wanted something intimate, just close friends. But Marcus had insisted on a larger celebration. "Show the world what we have," he had said. "Show them that you're happy, that you're loved, that you're mine." The party planner had arranged for 200 guests to arrive at the penthouse. Victoria's remaining friends would be there. Her family would attend. People from her business world would come to witness what they all suspected was a mistake unfolding in real time. Marcus had been spending money aggressively. New clothes, jewelry, a motorcycle he didn't need. He had also been making changes to Victoria's will. He had suggested, very gently, that since they were getting married, she should update her legal documents. "What if something happened to you?" he had asked. "I want to make sure everything is taken care of. Your business, the penthouse, your investments. It should all go to your spouse, right? That's what married people do." Victoria, desperate to please him, had scheduled an appointment with her lawyer. She had signed documents she barely read, documents that made Marcus the primary beneficiary of her entire estate. But there was a problem. Victoria's sister, Catherine, had called that morning. She was coming to the party, and she had insisted on seeing Victoria before the guests arrived. Catherine was the only person Victoria hadn't completely isolated herself from, though Marcus had tried hard to change that. "Your sister is toxic," he would say. "She's trying to keep us apart. She's jealous of what we have." But Catherine was persistent, and Victoria, despite everything, still loved her sister. Catherine arrived an hour before the party. She took one look at Victoria, and her face crumpled. Victoria had lost 20 pounds since she'd last seen her. Her face was drawn, her eyes hollow. She looked like she was disappearing. "What's happening to you?" Catherine asked, pulling her sister into an embrace. Victoria wanted to tell her everything. She wanted to confess about the isolation, the control, the way Marcus monitored her every move, the way she had signed away her entire fortune. But Marcus appeared in the doorway before she could speak, his smile cold and perfect. "Catherine," he said warmly, "Victoria didn't mention you were coming early. How wonderful." His tone suggested it was anything but wonderful. He positioned himself between the sisters, his hand on Victoria's lower back, a possessive gesture that Catherine recognized immediately. She had seen this pattern before in her work as a therapist. She had read about it in countless case studies. This was textbook abuse masked as devotion. "Can I talk to my sister alone?" Catherine asked, her professional voice taking over. Marcus laughed. "Of course. I was just leaving. I need to get ready for the party anyway." But before he left, he kissed Victoria on the mouth, slowly and deliberately, while maintaining eye contact with Catherine. It was a display of ownership. Once he was gone, Catherine took Victoria's hands. "Listen to me very carefully. Something is very wrong here. I need you to tell me the truth. Is he hurting you?" Victoria's first instinct was to defend him, to explain that he loved her, that Catherine was misunderstanding the situation. But looking into her sister's eyes, something broke inside her. She began to cry, deep, racking sobs that came from a place so far down inside her that she had forgotten it existed. She told Catherine everything: the isolation, the money, the control, the way he had systematically dismantled her sense of self. The will, the signed documents. Catherine listened without interrupting, her face growing darker with each revelation. "You have to leave him," she said finally. "Tonight. Come stay with me. We'll get a lawyer. We'll undo the will. But Victoria interrupted her. "I can't. I love him. And besides, what if I'm wrong? What if he really does love me, and I'm just being paranoid because everyone told me this would happen?" Catherine grabbed her sister's shoulders. "Victoria, listen to yourself. You're not being paranoid. You're being abused. The person downstairs is not in love with you. He's in love with your money, and he's getting impatient. That's why he pushed for the wedding. That's why he wanted the will changed. That's why." She stopped abruptly, her expression shifting to something deeper, darker. "Victoria, has he ever talked about what would happen if something happened to you?" Victoria felt ice in her veins. She remembered a conversation weeks ago. Marcus had been reading something on his phone, a news article about a woman who had died in an accident in her home. He had looked up thoughtfully. "It's so tragic," he had said, "when people die under mysterious circumstances. The spouse always inherits everything, but they're also the first suspect. Unless they have an alibi. Unless there are witnesses." He had smiled at her. "Good thing I love you too much to ever let anything happen to you." At that moment, Victoria understood. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Marcus didn't love her. He had never loved her. He had been performing love, crafting the perfect illusion, waiting for the right moment to what? Kill her? Make it look like an accident? Collect the inheritance and disappear? The doorbell rang. The first guests were arriving for the party. Catherine squeezed Victoria's hand. "We need to tell people. We need to get you away from him." But Victoria pulled away. She couldn't do it. Not tonight. Not in front of everyone. She needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how to extract herself from this trap without destroying herself in the process. She went to the bathroom and fixed her makeup. She put on the dress Marcus had chosen for her. Red, form-fitting, revealing. She looked like a woman in love at her own engagement party. No one would have guessed she was standing on the edge of an abyss, looking down into darkness, wondering if she would survive the fall. Victoria couldn't sleep. She lay beside Marcus in the darkness, listening to him breathe, wondering if this was how it would end, with his hands around her throat, or poison in her drink, or a carefully staged accident. The engagement party had been a nightmare. Everyone had congratulated them, but she could see the pity in their eyes. They all knew. They all suspected. And none of them could save her. By morning, Victoria had made a decision. She would pretend everything was normal while she figured out an escape plan. She couldn't go to the police. What would she tell them? That her fiancé had mentioned mortality in a theoretical way? That she felt controlled? That he had convinced her to change her will? There was no crime in that. Not yet. But she could undo the will. She could contact her lawyer privately, claim she had made a mistake, restore her original documents. She could move money to accounts Marcus didn't know about. She could gather evidence of his manipulation. And then, when she was ready, she would leave. She started that afternoon while Marcus was at the gym. She called her lawyer, James Chun, from her office at the company headquarters. "I need to meet with you," she said quietly. "Alone. And I need it to be today." James had heard the desperation in her voice. He agreed to see her at his office at 5 p.m. But Marcus was waiting for her when she left the building. He was sitting in the car he had bought him, engine running, blocking her path to the parking garage. "Where were you?" he asked, his smile never wavering. "You didn't tell me you were going to the office today." Victoria's heart was pounding. "I had some documents to review. I should have mentioned it. I am sorry." She hated how small her voice sounded. "Are you meeting someone?" he asked. "A man, perhaps." She denied it, but he didn't believe her. He drove her to the lawyer's office anyway, insisted on going inside with her. "I want to understand your business matters," he said sweetly. "After all, I'm going to be your husband. Everything that's yours is mine." Victoria told James she had changed her mind about the meeting. It was nothing urgent. They could discuss another time. She could see the concern in her lawyer's eyes as she left with Marcus. She could see him understanding, finally, what was really happening. That night, Marcus was cold. He didn't touch her. He didn't speak to her. He simply ignored her presence in the penthouse, a punishment more effective than any violence could have been. Victoria begged for his forgiveness, for his attention, for anything to make him acknowledge her again. By midnight, she was broken, desperate, willing to do anything to get him back. "I was being stupid," she confessed as they lay in bed, not touching. "I was going to change my will back, but I don't want to. I want everything to stay exactly as it is. I trust you completely. I'm sorry I doubted you." She felt him relax beside her. She heard him smile in the darkness. "I know you are," he whispered, "and I forgive you." He reached over and pulled her close, his hand pressing against her throat, not threatening, but a reminder, a promise, a threat. The next morning, Victoria woke to find Marcus on his phone, texting someone. When she asked who he was talking to, he showed her the screen without hesitation. It was a woman named Sienna, a young actress he had met at an audition. The messages were flirtatious, intimate in a way that made Victoria's stomach drop. "What is this?" she whispered. Marcus shrugged. "Just a friend. Don't be jealous. You know you're the only one I love." But he didn't delete the messages. He let her see them. He wanted her to see them. He wanted her to know that he was capable of leaving, that her hold on him was fragile, that she needed to do more to keep him. Victoria increased his allowance that day. She gave him an additional $50,000. She told him she loved him, that she would never doubt him again, that he could do whatever he wanted as long as he stayed with her. Marcus accepted the money and the desperation with equal pleasure. But Catherine had seen the messages too. Victoria, in a moment of weakness, had shown them to her sister. Catherine had taken one look at the screen, and her face had hardened into something Victoria had never seen before, pure, focused rage. "That's it," Catherine said. "We're going to the police. We're going to get a restraining order. We're going to—" But Victoria had stopped her. "He'll know it was me. He'll leave, and I'll never see him again. And I can't live without him." Catherine had stared at her sister like she was a stranger. "Do you hear yourself? That's not love, Victoria. That's addiction. That's abuse. That's a death sentence." But Victoria couldn't hear her. She was too far gone, too deep in the web Marcus had woven around her. She only knew that she needed him, that without him she was nothing, that the only way to survive was to give him whatever he wanted. She had no idea that her sister was about to do something that would change everything. Catherine couldn't wait any longer. On a Tuesday night, she called the police and reported her concerns, not about Marcus's intentions, but about Victoria's safety. She told them Victoria was being isolated, controlled, and potentially in danger. The police sent a welfare check to the penthouse. Marcus answered the door with Victoria beside him, her hand in his, smiling. She told the officers everything was fine. She insisted she was happy. But one officer noticed the bruises on her wrist, shaped like fingers. Marcus claimed she had fallen. Victoria confirmed the story, her eyes dead. The officers left, but they filed a report. Catherine kept calling them, kept insisting something was wrong. And Marcus knew it. He knew Catherine was a threat. He knew the noose was tightening. That Friday night, Marcus suggested they celebrate. Just us, he said. Wine, candles, something special. Victoria was relieved. Maybe he was finally accepting their life together. Maybe he was ready to stop the games. She prepared herself carefully, wearing the negligee he loved. She dimmed the lights. She waited. Marcus handed her a glass of wine. Red wine, expensive, the kind she usually saved for special occasions. She drank it without hesitation. Within 20 minutes, the room began to spin. Her vision blurred. Her limbs felt heavy. "What did you?" she tried to say. But Marcus was already moving. He had planned this for months. The insurance policy he had taken out on her life. The will. The evidence he had carefully constructed showing Victoria's mental decline, her isolation, her depression. He had been setting this up since the day they met. He didn't use violence. He was too smart for that. Instead, he positioned her on the bathroom floor, arranged the empty wine bottle and sleeping pills on the counter, and called 911. "My fiancée," he said, his voice breaking perfectly with manufactured grief. "I think she took something. I think she wanted to hurt herself. Please, please hurry." The paramedics arrived in 8 minutes. By then it was too late. Victoria Ashford, age 52, was pronounced dead at 11:47 p.m. The initial assessment was suicide. A wealthy woman, isolated and depressed, had taken her own life. The pills and wine told that story. The will made Marcus Reid, her grieving fiancé, the beneficiary of her entire $340 million estate. But Catherine knew the truth, and she had one piece of evidence Marcus didn't know she possessed, a recording of Victoria confessing everything, made just days before her death. The detective assigned to Victoria's case was Elena Cruz, a 20-year veteran who had seen enough suicides to recognize when something didn't add up. The scene was too clean. The timeline didn't match. And when Catherine walked into the precinct with the recording, everything changed. On the tape, Victoria's voice was unmistakable. She described Marcus's manipulation, his control, his obsession with her money. She talked about changing her will, about feeling trapped, about being terrified. The recording was made 3 days before her death. It was suicide prevention evidence, not suicide evidence. The autopsy was re-examined. The toxicology report showed a dosage of sedatives far higher than Victoria could have self-administered. There were defensive marks on her hands. She had fought back. Marcus had forced the pills down her throat while she was already unconscious from the wine. Marcus was arrested at the airport, trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands with 3 suitcases and Victoria's jewelry. He maintained his innocence throughout the investigation, but the evidence was overwhelming. Phone records showed his searches, how to stage a suicide, insurance payout timeline, how to make poisoning look accidental. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Marcus's defense team argued he was a young man in love, that Victoria's depression was well documented, that the recording was taken out of context. But the prosecution painted a different picture, a predator who had systematically groomed and isolated his victim, who had studied her vulnerabilities and exploited them, who had waited for the perfect moment to collect his prize. The jury took 4 hours to deliberate. Guilty on all counts: murder, fraud, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Marcus Reid, received a life sentence without parole. He is currently incarcerated at Pelican Bay State Prison, where he has reportedly told other inmates that Victoria was crazy, that she deserved what happened to her, that he regrets nothing. Catherine Ashford donated Victoria's entire estate, all $340 million, to a foundation dedicated to supporting victims of financial abuse and intimate partner violence. The Victoria Ashford Foundation now operates in 40 states, helping women escape situations like the one that killed her sister. Detective Elena Cruz went on to specialize in financial abuse cases. She has trained hundreds of officers to recognize the warning signs of predatory relationships disguised as love. And in a penthouse overlooking the city, the lights go dark every night, a monument to a woman who had everything except the one thing that mattered most, someone who actually loved her.